So we're just going to wait for a few more people to join before we get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Cynthia. I am the project manager at the UN Global Compact Network UK. Thanks for everyone who's joined today. We're gonna get started really shortly. I'm gonna introduce my colleague, who is the program manager for the Global Goals program at the Global Compact Network UK. And then I just wanted to introduce Matthew, who will be starting shortly after her. He was our SDG 2019 runner-up, and he works at Refinitiv, and so he'll be sharing our sorry, mommy. He'll be sorry. I'm so sorry. This is what happens when. This is what happens. Anyway, Matthew will be sharing our his innovation work at Refinitiv.
Thanks, Cynthia, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the UN Global Compact. So we're the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative. It launched 20 years ago when Kofi Annan was the Secretary General, and today we have over 10,000 companies and I think more than 3,500 non-businesses who've made the commitment to our 10 principles to support sustainability. Matt, if you could do the next slide, please. Thank you. So the very essence of the Global Compact are these 10 universal principles. They're derived from UN treaties in the areas of human rights, labour, environment and anti-corruption. So this foundation provides a rock solid basis for any corporate sustainability program or supplier code of conduct. They're really truly universal principles. They're based on treaties which are ratified by every country around the world. So it's a really very powerful statement for a company to be able to point to this as the basis for their work. So to join the Global Compact, and if you're not already an organisation which is a member, I'd encourage you to look into it. Your CEO would need to commit to these kind of 3 key pieces. So firstly, to operationalise the Global Compact principles throughout the organisation. Secondly, to report annually on your progress towards doing so. And finally, to support the wider UN Development Agenda. And that, of course, is best represented today by the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which Matt is going to be exploring one of his innovative initiatives towards those. So our role as the UN Global Compact Local Network UK is to support all of the members in the UK towards that end. So we have 3 main work streams: business and human rights, climate action, and global goals, which this webinar series fits within. It says there in normal year we do over 30 events. I think we're probably hitting more than 50 or 60 this year because we're doing things a little bit different and a lot more online than we would have done in normal times, but we cover a very broad range of themes. We have working groups that go kind of deeper into subjects, and we've got some bigger conferences that we do to raise awareness of some of the challenges that we're addressing. So I think next slide, brilliant, thanks Matt. So on the screen we've just got a couple of our upcoming events. We've got 2 events in our Making Global Goals local business webinar series. So one of those is about getting started, giving you all of the tools and resources to really start engaging with the SDGs. And another event we're going to be doing a deep dive into goal 3, which is good health and wellbeing, and we'll be inviting Dr. Sean Davis from the Royal Mail to be sharing some of their work in it. And then of course this series, which is the SDGs and Innovation series. The next one will be held on the 2nd of July and will be featuring Mercato Metropolitato in that event. All of our events are available on our website, which you can see at the bottom of the screen. And I just wanted to mention a couple of programs which are open to all of our members, but of course, do check out the information online or get in touch with us if you're interested in becoming a member. You can see there our Young SDG Innovators program. It's a 10-month program aimed at young professionals to give them all of the skills and the knowledge to develop innovative solutions for the SDGs. We've got our Target Gender Equality program, which is all about helping you kind of reach those ambitious corporate targets for women's representation and leadership. And I should say that the deadline for signing up to that is this Sunday, so I'd really encourage you to have a look online. And finally, our SDG Ambition program, which is going to be supporting businesses to kind of really raise your level of ambition towards the SDGs. And more information will be available on the website along with all the other programs. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Matt, who's obviously our main speaker for the session. There's a Q&A function that you should be able to use, so please do type in your questions throughout, and we'll get some bit of Q&A after Matt's presentation. But for now, Matt, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jessica, and thanks again, Cynthia, for the introduction. It's both an honour and a privilege to be invited to speak to you all today on the call, and particularly share my own personal and professional journey as it relates to SDGs and innovation. I am Director of Social Innovation and Philanthropy at a company called Refinitiv. For those of you who aren't familiar with Refinitiv, they're one of the world's largest providers of financial markets data and infrastructure. But what I'm about to share with you today has nothing to do with the financial markets world per se, but it's really about looking into how we can integrate and incorporate social innovation ideas from within organizations, how we can encourage it from a partnership perspective, and really how the SDGs, if you're looking at aligning a social innovation initiative to a sustainable development goal, can really help accelerate the impact and progress of that particular initiative. My journey in particular is a 3-year journey. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to take you through the finer details of the 3-year journey. I'll do a whistle-stop tour just for the purposes of teeing this conversation up, and hopefully for the Q&A session at the end, feel free to ask any questions if you want me to dive deeper into anything I touch on here. But essentially, the role of Director Social Innovation and Philanthropy didn't actually exist until the start of this year, and it's really the culmination of that 3-year journey that has led to me being in the position I am today, but equally has led to a number of other initiatives within the organization coming to fruition. And that's really what I wanted to share with you today. So in the interest of time, I'll dive right in if you don't mind. So the idea itself, it was a really simple one, and you'll probably know a little bit about it from the description in the event for the call today. The idea is called TicketAid. That's the website that we built, and it really looks at allocating empty seats at concert venues to fans, to people interested in attending that event, and doing so raising funds for charity. So making sure that we're, in other words, filling seats for good causes, making sure that those seats don't remain empty, that we're leveling the playing field for access to those tickets, those opportunities and events, and filling those seats for good causes, making sure that all the funds raised through getting those seats filled are going to worthy causes, charities, and where we can, aligning those to the UN SDGs. So as I mentioned, a very simple idea, just filling empty seats at concert venues. That's really where it started. And it was something that I was running alongside the day job at the time. I was trying to learn how to code, to develop an app, and thinking about the social enterprise route. And a word that I'll use now, some of you may not be familiar with, but it is a term that is increasingly becoming popular within the corporate space, and that's social entrepreneurship. I definitely say TicketAid is a social, or a story of social entrepreneurship. The idea being there that this isn't something that we've taken to market at a social enterprise level. It's been fostered and nurtured from within a large corporate, almost in a bit of an incubator type format, a Kickstarter program, other words that are used in that corporate innovation space, to really flourish and come to life and provide as much impact as possible. So this is really a story of social entrepreneurship. It started out as something I was doing alongside the day job, ended up raising quite a bit of money for charity as part of something that's called the Prince's Trust Million Makers competition. For those of you familiar with the Prince's Trust, is one of the UK's leading charities, where they challenge organisations entering the competition to try and transform £1,500 seed fund into £10,000 by the end of a 5 or 6 month period. TicketAid was obviously an idea that I'd been toying with prior to being privy to that competition and our corporate entry, but thought that it was the perfect environment for us to test the idea and to hopefully, if successful, scale from within a large organisation like Refinitv. Ended up raising around £16,000 alone just through TicketAid for that competition period. And it started to get some really nice feedback and traction from our employees around the world. It did initially start as just a UK-based website, very basic version of a ticket allocation website. But we realized that this situation where organizations have access to tickets through sponsorship agreements, marketing opportunities, client invite opportunities, that we weren't alone in having access to these types of tickets. There are a lot of other organizations out there that do that. And actually the secondary ticket market, if we're talking about tickets that are then resold after being put on the market, we're talking into the billions as an industry. And really, if we can capture 1% of that, if that, from a TicketAid perspective, and try to reallocate those allocations for funds for great causes, then we're talking a lot of money and huge potential for impact there. So that's really what we were going after. We wanted to allow not just our own organization to contribute to the platform, put our own assets on there that weren't being used, but allow other organizations to do the same, branch out to an individual level, and allow our users to participate as well. These don't have to be corporate tickets. They can be tickets to events, opportunities. It's got an auction capability, so we can auction off various items. We've had artwork on there, and actually, given the switch to the virtual environment, some of you may be thinking, well, no events are taking place, so how are you how are you managing to still raise funds for charity through TicketAid? You'd be surprised how many people have come to us and asked to use TicketAid for the virtual event space, and use us as a way to convert that ticket allocation scenario into a fundraising opportunity. So we've run or helped allocate tickets for virtual pub quizzes, for at-home yoga sessions, through to actual virtual events that were previously physical in-person events and have now transitioned to the virtual world. So yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised at the switch and pivot and transition there. But really that just highlights the flexibility and indeed the focus on the innovation side of these types of initiatives, and trying to, where we can, maintain a digital presence. We were quite fortunate that it was a website that we built, and that was our innovation initiative. So we were more easily positioned to transition to that virtual environment. But I'd absolutely encourage you to definitely have a digital platform strategy at the back of your mind if you are thinking about your own social innovation scenarios going forward. So that's really where we took it over kind of a 3-year period. It ended up transforming into a full-time role for myself as proposition director of TicketAid. We started to slowly scale and grow. It went from a UK website to a UK-US website to a bit of a more global access website. We brought some partners on board that wanted to use the site for their own fundraising initiatives aligned to causes of importance to them, again aligned to certain UN SDGs as focus areas, and ended up raising to date around $150,000 for charity, and that's through the reallocation of 3,000 tickets. Now again, I'm not just talking corporate tickets here, but it could be anything that we've had listed on the site that we've been able to effectively convert, put a price tag on that, and transform those funds into funds raised for charity. And have been able to support over 18 charities throughout that period, of course, aligned to various other SDGs with their own specific causes. And that's, yeah, kind of a whistle-stop tour of where TicketAid started, from a very simple idea to fill empty seats at concert venues, to how we were able to focus our activity around partnership, around ensuring that we are helping others raise funds for charities of importance to them, aligned to SDGs of importance to them. But what I wanted to call out as part of that journey was this snowball effect. I mentioned having a focus on the SDGs acts as an accelerator for these types of initiatives, and that absolutely rang true in our instance of TicketAid. TicketAid was the start of my personal social innovation journey, a social innovation journey for the company, Refinitiv, but also led to us requiring a vehicle, a legal entity essentially in place that could help us make these donations to charity in the form of grants. So that ultimately led to us requiring not only TicketAid to be established as a trading subsidiary of a charity, but equally establishing a charity in order to act as its parent. And that brings me on to Refinitiv Charities. And both of these are brand new in terms of establishment. TicketAid was established officially as a limited company social enterprise last year, and Refinitiv Charities again was established last year as well. Its focus initially was to help us make the grants that we'd raised through TicketAid to the charities that we were supporting on behalf of our donors, whether that be corporates or employees or anyone else that wanted to donate to the platform. But it's also grew into something much bigger, something that now acts as our grant making entity for Refinitiv, that has enabled us to pivot and be very flexible in light of current world pandemics and causes that are coming to the forefront of the daily conversation and daily news feed. We've been able to really transform Refinitiv Charities into something that was serving TicketAid into its own sustainable, separate charitable entity that has 4 key focus areas. As a board of trustees, we sat down and really wanted to use the UN Sustainable Development Goals as guidelines and set our focus area for where we wanted to give grants or make those grants as a charity going forward. And we settled on the 4 that you see on the screen: so good health and well-being, reduced inequalities, climate action, peace, justice, and strong institutions. And we felt that certainly for this year, being our first year of operations as a charity, we really wanted to encourage as many applications for funding as possible, and where we can, align those to a specific SDG, cause, and impact area. And we've been absolutely overwhelmed and really touched and humbled by the amount of people that have reached out, charities and individuals, even employees of Refinitiv that are really passionate about a charity or cause and have come to us saying, great, we'd love for you to support this particular entity focused on this cause, this SDG. And fortunate to have been in a position to provide what we call support grants, which are up to $5,000 in funding for those employee-led pitch requests for funding for charities, but equally larger project grants. And we've picked a number of charities at our last board meeting that we again aligned to these 4 SDGs that we'd really like to work with on the next 12 months on a particular project, where we'd be monitoring the impact of the funds granted, and how far we've been able to take that with that particular project with the charity. And that's seen us give over $1 million in grants to date. And bearing in mind, we're only still really into the financial year, a couple of months in. I'm really proud of that figure, and supporting over 20 charities and the causes in some way, shape or form aligning to those focus areas, SDG focus areas that we set. And just to clarify up front, those SDG focus areas are focus areas. We're not reporting per se as per the SDG frameworks for reporting. We're just using those as a guideline and helping us really set our focus for the types of causes and charities that we'd like to be supporting with those grants. So that's a really new and exciting part of the development, but again, part of that snowball effect of starting with a very simple social innovation idea, running with it, proving it, showing and demonstrating the impact, and it growing into something so much bigger than that initial idea. And Refinitiv Charities really is, certainly in my eyes, the next level of where Ticket Aid has been able to take that impact story and social innovation and SDG story. So really, if I was to whittle it down, I appreciate we're running slightly low on time here, so I'll whistle through the next so we can allow for some Q&A at the end. But if I was to think about the innovation side, given that this is a call about SDGs and innovation, the innovation idea initiative that we have at hand here being the Ticket Aid platform, if I was to strip it back and think, actually, what are we doing? What are we challenging? We're essentially challenging the fundraising industry. We're challenging organizations, individuals, brands to think a lot more creatively around how they can raise funds for charity. It doesn't necessarily have to be the 5K races, the bake sales, the virtual pub quizzes. We can really get creative around how we raise funds for some great causes and charities, and Ticket Aid is really challenging that. And I'd hope to certainly see a lot more variety of listings on the site going forward. Like I said, not just corporate tickets, but a whole host of different items donated, really getting people to think creatively about how we can list something that we can transform into a decent amount raised for causes of importance to them. But that goes a step further in terms of, if we were to align that to an SDG, what would we call out here as being the SDG of focus for Ticket Aid? And I think it's certainly the partnership for the goals. I touched on it earlier, but I'll quickly whistle through that this section of the presentation now. That we put the initiative in place, we were able to scale that and pass it on to our partners to help them raise funds for causes of importance to them, which then led to that being passed on to more employees, a larger audience and user base for Ticket Aid, equally getting involved with the platform and donation capabilities, putting their own opportunities on here, running their own events to raise funds for causes of importance, not just for their organization and employer, but to them personally as well. And again, the SDGs that they really wanted to be supporting. That has ultimately led to, again, that snowball effect where the numbers have just compounded and expanded, where we've now in a situation to say we've supported over 40 charities to date, ranging from, if not all, certainly the majority of the SDGs in terms of a cause or focus area. A couple of examples I wanted to call out, and this is just briefly moving on to a wider topic of where I think as employees of organizations, or even a budding social entrepreneur or social entrepreneur could think about. It's the social enterprise angle. Now, we're currently seeing a real boom in the social enterprise space, and I really feel that we can be supporting these social enterprises in a whole host of ways. And I'm just going to bring up a couple of examples of what we've done either this year or late on last year to support social enterprises in this space. World Environment Day, June 5th, we decided to announce our new sustainability goals for 2025 and 2030. One of those goals was to plant and conserve 1 million trees by 2030. And to launch that, we decided to plant 1 tree per employee in a site in Scotland, as well as use that as an opportunity to allow customers and partners to join us on that journey. So there'll be various initiatives running throughout the course of this year where customers of Refinitiv, partners of Refinitiv can get involved and help contribute to the planting of trees and increase that tree count. But for now, we've kind of launched with our first site of hopefully many, the Refinitiv Global Forest, where we're looking to partner with social enterprises and various other site conservationists around the world to combat deforestation in particular. And if we're thinking about that SDG, life on land or climate action, that's certainly a focus area here. We partnered with a social enterprise that make bespoke socks and offer a one-for-one type scenario where you buy a pair and they give a pair to a homeless shelter. There are a lot of really great, creative, innovative social enterprises out there, but if we find ourselves working for a large organization and are in that position of being able to help these enterprises scale and support their business model, at the same time do a whole load of good for their cause and what's of importance to them and the charities that they're supporting, then I wholeheartedly recommend just doing a search for these types of social enterprises. It's truly inspirational what you come across. And Stand for Socks were the ones we partnered with here, and they did a great job of creating our own bespoke socks for a one-for-one scenario. Interestingly, we also put these on TicketAid to raise funds for a homeless shelter as well. So we doubled up on the impact essentially. We made a booth entirely out of recycled plastic from Canary Wharf. So for those of you based in London, you'll be familiar with Canary Wharf. Our office is based there. We attended an event where our booth was entirely made out of plastic sourced from that site, again in partnership with a social enterprise. You may have come across Ecosia, social impact engine. That was just a simple switch of thinking, okay, why don't we challenge our employees to use an alternative search engine, and Ecosia is a great search engine alternative where the revenue they generate through advertisement, they'll put towards planting trees, and they provide you with a corporate-wide tree count, so you can see your tree count grow as the activity on that search engine continues to increase. So finally, just to touch, that's a kind of whistle-stop tour. I'm definitely available if anyone wants to reach out over email or over LinkedIn for me to dive into a little bit more detail of what I've discussed, or if you wanted to share some feedback or thoughts or ideas, I'd be happy to do that. I just wanted to share my 3 key takeaways that if you forget everything I've just spoken about and just think about social innovation, the SDGs, and what you could potentially do is just start. It sounds simple, but the highest barrier to implementation is just not starting that idea. It may mean doing it alongside the day job, but moving on to the second point here, you really do need to show the stats, the impact, the facts for these social innovation initiatives. It doesn't necessarily cut it just talking about what you think it could do, running it alongside the day job, working in a kind of a group to pilot that initiative until you get some hard facts and figures to prove that there's potential there and you are having tangible impact off the bat is really key to getting that idea off the ground and running. And please, please, please try and have partnership in the back of your mind. You can't do this alone. I certainly didn't, and I'm pretty sure anyone else you speak to that's in the entrepreneurial space or social innovation space will say the same. Really unlocking the potential of any idea takes a good grasp of partnership, and bringing others on board with you as part of that journey is key. And that's one of the reasons why I feel SDG number 17 from the work that I do is so integral with Partnership for the Goals, because it's infinitely scalable and you can reach out to a lot more people to help them achieve their focus areas and SDGs of importance to them. I'll just leave this up on the screen whilst we open the floor if we do have time for questions, but head to ticketaid.com if you find that interesting. We've got refinitivcharities.org that goes into more detail around who we are as a grant-making entity and how you can get involved. We've got a great social impact space on refinitiv.com where we're spotlighting what our employees are doing in the social innovation, social impact space. You'll find that in the About tab of refinitiv.com. And equally, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn if you do wish to follow up with any questions, if we don't manage to cover anything now on the call. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. That was brilliant. And I really liked your 3 key takeaways for everybody at the end. I think that was really good. I think we could probably squeeze in a couple of questions. So if anybody's got them, please do put it on the Q&A function. We've got one up there, which is about global strategies for designing a sustainable business in risk situations. And I know you were talking about kind of the resilience of your of TicketAid and how it's been able to kind of adapt for COVID-19. So yeah, I just wondered if you could touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually that's quite a timely question, because as of today, Refinitiv launched their annual sustainability report. And in there, we definitely do touch on resilience to certain causes of impact, in particular the TCFD, Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosure. That is an area that we constantly need to have our kind of mindset focused on. I think digital is definitely the easiest or the lowest hanging fruit, to use a very overused business terminology, for us to ensure that we do remain resilient. A lot of some really fantastic social innovation ideas out there are very hands-on, and that's not to say TicketAid isn't hands-on or other digital platforms aren't hands-on. To call out some mentoring examples of late, a lot of in-person mentoring for the charities that we support was in place, and given what happened during COVID-19 with the pandemic, a lot of those charities and causes have had to pivot towards a digital online e-mentoring platform and program. Without that digital angle, I think it would have been very difficult for them to do so. So definitely have digital in the back of your mind when you're working on something in some way, shape or form, even as a fail-safe for if you find yourself in the situation that we find ourselves today. But resilience is a really interesting question, and I certainly could spend a lot more time talking about it. But if I was just to say one thing to think about, that is just remain digitally focused on your impact and how you can serve that impact to your communities.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Matthew. And there's another question here, which has just popped up, and I think that was going to be my second question. Are you finding that your partners are looking to focus on a few of the SDGs, or even a few kind of the targets underneath the SDGs, rather than trying to spread too thin across all 17? Yeah,
that's a definite trend, and actually is advisable. A lot of our partners are saying, look, we look at what we do well as a core business, what are our core products and services, and we really want to make sure we have as big an impact as possible when we do put our expertise to good use. And the way we can truly do that is to pick those SDGs that really speak to us as a business. So it depends on the partner that we're working with. It depends on their industry that they're working in as a business. But yes, is the answer to the question. We do have partners saying we're not spreading ourselves too thin, which is actually encouraging. They are taking time to think about how they can make as big an impact as possible, and are therefore refining and picking the SDGs that are right for them.
That's brilliant. And I suppose the last question for me actually is really inspiring to hear how you kind of took this idea and you made it for the UK, and then you kind of managed to scale it up. And I know you kind of touched on the importance of partnerships there, but have you got any kind of tips or any kind of advice for people to try and work with stakeholders to kind of do something similar with some of their own innovative ideas?
Great question. And I was guilty of underestimating the willingness of people to help, I must admit. And that would be my biggest tip. It's honestly share your idea with those you're closest to, with those you feel can help you bring that to life. Be strategic. If you are quite protective about the idea in terms of who you share that with, think about who can help you actually implement it. If it's a technology solution, speak to a developer team or a developer team internally at your organization, but never underestimate the willingness of people to help you, because if they're passionate about the idea, they buy into what you're doing, and they're equally as passionate about the cause you're trying to support, then they'll join you on that journey, and you've got your first partner as part of that immediately.
Matthew, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for answering all of the questions. I know there's probably more coming in, but I'm aware of the time. So I'm going to hand it over to Cynthia to finish us off.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to remind everyone that we have our last of the series of our SDG and Innovation series coming up on the 2nd of July, featuring Mercato Metropolitano. And we have their CEO coming to speak to us about all of the innovative business, how they've created an innovative business model that is centered around the SDGs. So please do join, and thank you for joining our webinar today. And thank you so much, Matthew, for sharing with us. That was really brilliant.
No problem. A pleasure.